we're all good. All right, well, welcome everybody. Today is another exciting episode. We've got Professor Sylvain Rochon with us of the Alliance of Extraterrestrial Diplomatic Contact, and we're talking about the future of humanity. Really, we've met in a previous talk about some of the interests that we share with between Tapped in Talent and uh, Sylvain, and we'd love to get into those more. So, welcome, Sylvain. Welcome, Angelique. Look forward to this exciting conversation.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me in. Yeah.
So, yeah, where do we start? There was so much. We talked about free energy, extraterrestrial contact, advances in human health, life expectancy potentially. Um, we're sort of very much into um, reverse engineering information using AI to sort of better understand the past and even at a soul level. But yeah, open it up. Is there any particular topic that's of most interest to you at the moment, Sylvain?
Well, I think what would be helpful in getting us started is for me to share with you a vision of the future, a kind of a general portrait of what a day in our future could look like. Okay, and that would probably kickstart things.
Yes.
So I'm projecting, let's say, 20 years. Let's give us enough time. Okay, projecting 20 years into the future. This was what a typical day could look like for any individual. So imagine you wake up on a Tuesday, right, which would usually be a work day, and maybe it is, but you wake up when your body wakes up. You don't have your alarm. You wake up, you feel comfortable, you have a good night's sleep, brain's awake. You don't have a particular worry waking up that's stressing you out, even though you do have something to do during the day. Because you may be engaged. Let's say you're engaged in creating new avenues of entertainment for your city because it's something you enjoy doing, something you're good at. But you're operating at a strategic level, and artificial intelligence is all around you. You have agents, and they're maintaining everything. They're dealing with minor crises. They're already kind of taking care of scheduling of a bunch of sports in the city. You taking feedback from the population about what they would like, what they wouldn't like. They're doing all sorts of stuff while you're sleeping and constantly, and you're really not there. Like if you're not there, everything's getting taken care of anyway. But you're there to still, from your passion, wake up after your breakfast, you review all sorts of information, you query the AI about what's going on, what do I need to know? It knows you and what you need to know. And you start doing your job, which you chose, not out of obligation, but because you enjoy contributing to society in this way. And you're inputting a pure expert human injection of knowledge into the system in participation with the AI to guide it and its programming in such a way that it has the human touch, human experience touch, right? Out of passion. And there's no stress about it because you're actually not getting salary from that. This is just something, it's an occupation. It's how you participate. And everybody has something or multiple things, and they can choose to do it or not because AI is there to do it for you anyway. And most of the value of society is not in doing that. That's just kind of a passion project in a way to include humanity in all the business of a day, of everybody's day. The most value that you have is with your own family, with your children, teaching, learning, enjoying, and maybe with your friends, interacting with your neighbors, with the city, doing different things. Because this is something that we know even today that is high value, but today we feel that we don't have time to deliver that value because we must be busy doing something else to earn money and to do other things. Now, AI satisfies that requirement for us in 20 years, in that day. So we're relieved to contribute maximum human value within humanity.
Yeah.
And you spend your day doing this and progressing in collaboration with the created intelligences that you have, and you are ultimately very low anxiety and low stress, and you just enjoy life. This is the picture and the feeling of what we could have in 20 years. It could happen sooner, but 20 years is safe, I would say. So that's what I'm aiming for. And also, and then let's talk about another component in 20 years. It's highly likely that within that environment and that non stress component, all sorts of conversations come up because you're not stressed about work, right? You can talk about
Yeah.
other things that are important, and you cannot be guided to do evil things very well because you're not stressed, and you can't be stressed by a government or an organization that tries to pressure you into thinking a certain way because you know the universe how it is, and you're fine. So you don't have a lot of stress, therefore you can't be coerced into thinking in wrong ways. So it's really hard to coerce a whole population into doing
Yeah.
things that isn't right. And therefore, our society actually includes extraterrestrials. They have come, they have interacted with us for about maybe 10, 15 years already. And we're fine, and we're not threatening, and we're collaborative, and we are have a bigger vision of the universe because of that contact. And now we're exploring much bigger things, bigger technologies through the wisdom of our exchanges with extraterrestrials and our own exploration. So that's the vision.
Yeah.
What do you think?
What a beautiful picture you're painting there, and it sort of aligns with what we've been talking about between Angelique and I in terms of the shift that we are feeling from where the whole society is starting to move slowly but decisively from fear-based systems to more harmonious systems. And we've seen the tenets of that for quite a while. But at the pinnacle, at the leadership level, we're not quite seeing it yet. But more and more people are starting to now organize around heart-centered things, irrespective of yesterday's constraints. And so, to hear you speak about it with such clarity, that that's what we can have. What we're sort of looking at is to help people on that journey. So with raising awareness, and I've come up with a new concept really in the last couple of days. Is we've long been talking about achieving this singularity, and it
Mhm.
was always sort of spoken of in the realm of technology that we as humans are linear creatures, but that our computers can compute exponentially. And so the more we're sort of interfacing with AI, I think we actually, as individuals, are starting to hit a point of singularity where we are completely centered in many different ways between our masculine and our feminine sort of energies, but also with our concept of time, that time is a moment, is now. And so we can think about a past, but we can also think about forever. And I think in that 20 years, as technology advances and as some of the repressed technology perhaps get exposed, we'll see massive advances in human health, energy concepts that are going to power AI and all the things. So I totally share your vision, and I can start seeing early bits of it happening. So it's really exciting time to be alive.
I think it's very very exciting. And it's going way faster than we
Mm,
think, like, because we think linearly. Just
yeah,
to your point, like we are in an exponential process where things are moving really really fast, and yet even though cognitively we know, because we can trace the different, when did ChatGPT 3 come out? Well, that was like 2 years ago or 3 years
yeah,
ago. Anyway,
yeah,
about 3 years ago now, I guess. And like not that long ago, we didn't have smartphones. Not that long before that, we had internet. That was only 25 years ago that we started to have like a decent internet, like a usable business internet.
Yeah.
And not that long before that, like I remember I had my very first personal computer. I was 13, therefore that was 1987. Third was so that's 10, let's say 12 years before the very first internet. That's fast, man.
Yeah, it is.
But and now it's way, way faster. We are
Yeah.
now like, look, we're now able to identify specific genes within DNA that are
Mm,
attributed to certain diseases within minutes.
yeah.
It's like billions of base pairs, and we create applications for that. And this involve AI now, where we can predict what gene is actually going to going to be involved in certain
Yeah.
diseases. It's
Yeah.
mind-boggling. Where just 3 years ago that was impossible.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, like we kind of like still live in this bubble of linearity anyway, even though we
Mm,
can reason and understand the steps like I just did. We still feel like, well, it's not really fast. We still feel like that. But
yeah.
you're right. What is and I have to go back to something Elon Musk said, and I agree and disagree with lots of stuff the man says. I mean,
Yeah.
like there's a variety. Like I don't know, just like any other brilliant person. Like I won't necessarily agree with, right? But he started. I think it was it called? Oh my gosh, Neuralink,
Yes.
the company that wants to implant. And the reason why he did that was that he wanted humans to compete with AI, to make humans exponential within their own body, within the
Yeah. Yeah.
externality of AI. And I thought just on the outset that was a ridiculous concept because it's kind of sticking to the concept of competition. Oh, something's more intelligent than us, therefore we have to be more intelligent than it.
Yeah.
Do we? Do we really?
Yeah. Yeah. To what end?
Do we need to become cyborgs and remain in a competitive state
Yeah.
all
No.
the
That's
time?
right.
No, we don't want to be competitive. We want to get ourselves
Yeah.
out of that. That's what
But
we want.
that's that thing where I sort of see the singularity, because the competitive state is typically a tenet of of the divine masculine. Let's just put it that way.
Mhm.
Where that's that bit that needs to compete to get forward direction to certain motion, and now the rising of the divine feminine balances that with empathy, with care, with nurturing, and with the infinite possibilities of everything always changing. And we're
Mhm.
coming to terms with that. Some people better than others. Um, but yeah, if you believe that Elon says these things, one of his things that he's always said is that he wants us to become an interplanetary species.
Mhm.
So it'd be interesting to get your take on that point, and also whether or not we even think that's possible with combustion engine propelled rockets.
Well, yeah, I have no objection about becoming interplanetary. I think that's cool.
Yeah,
That's fine. It is an extreme challenge, though, because other planets are hostile to us, like really, at least those that are in our solar system. So it's a cool, for now, it's an explorer's dream more than
yeah,
anything, and maybe a scientist's dream because you get to explore and examine, make close by. Like there's lots of really good reasons to go that, but the the concept of establishing a large colony to as a kind of a backup humanity, but that was
yeah,
why he wants to go to Mars, and
yeah,
that is also interesting. I don't mind that, but I don't agree with the premise of why we need it.
yeah,
Like the effort of doing that on Mars is superior than the effort of fixing Earth.
yeah. I totally agree.
So
Yeah,
yeah, it's kind of like wondering, and like there is one point on the positive side for the Mars is that the Mars concept. Like, yes, it's more effort, but also there's fewer human barriers in doing it, because here, if you want to create paradise here, you have to have
Yeah,
agreement with other people that want to keep what they have, and
yeah,
that is hard environmentally, and for all sorts of other reasons, way easier to fix here, right?
yeah, yeah,
So, there are points both ways. I think we should become explorers, but not for the reason that we should escape Earth or escape its rules. I think like we have a good place here. Like
yeah.
the
It's
good,
beautiful. Yeah,
beautiful. It's got a vibrant ecosystem that we can rejuvenate and we can
yeah,
bring back. And when I wrote my book Engineering Paradise in 2000, when I published in 2018, I wrote it in 2017 basically. One of the primary concepts behind that idea of engineering paradise here was that uh, well, let's bring it away. There's a fundamental element that kind of triggers this positive engineering state, and that is chronic stress. We live within systems that are stressful to us, to
yeah,
human beings. It creates anxiety, and biologically, what happens is that you have a lot of cortisol. You have basically results of the sympathetic neural system. So what makes us stress and kind of competitive, and because we're afraid of not having the next meal, not having enough money, losing position. So that has all sorts of effects. So we're always stressed, and when people are always stressed, they develop antisocial behavior. All sorts of things you see around you, crime, drugs, uh, some forms of competition also are derive of a
yeah,
human state that is stressed, that kind of like forgets we're human and trying
yeah,
to collaborate, just trying to compete for resources and position all the time.
yeah,
So this is biological, so it's hard to get away from it. And we always are fighting that. Those of us that are a bit more conscious, we're fighting that on a conscious level, and it's hard. So what I wrote about is like, well, if we want to fix basically everything in a chain reaction, let's build new systems where
yeah,
we are not in chronic stress all the time. Let's use AI, use genetic engineering, use social engineering, use all these technologies, build new systems where people can breathe, have
yeah,
basic
yeah,
needs met, are not afraid constantly. Breathe. Now you have parasympathetic nervous system going on in everybody's body, which is a state of collaboration, friendship, connection with each other. Now you're naturally, even without thinking, collaborative and
yeah, yeah,
loving and sharing.
yeah,
Now you can do anything you want. Now you have crime reduction. You have all sorts of stuff. The foundation is set for all sorts of openness all over the place. And that's really the key is the systems are now the poison that are in our veins constantly that we're fighting against to build a new world.
yeah. Angelique,
Um,
let's bring you into
yes,
the chat.
I'm very eager to ask. So then, please take us back to your earlier years. Where did your interest in all these concepts come from? Was there a point in your life where you decided this is what interests me? Was it a gradual thing? Do you mind taking us back to some earlier times in your life,
Like the ET or the paradise?
or everything? Like how did these things develop for you?
Well, I had this stress actually when I was a
Mm,
child. I was very concerned for some reason about the whole world.
Mm,
Like I saw the world had problems, and I felt helpless into changing anything. And I remember I was maybe 12 or 13 years old. Like this is a bit later because you're a child, and I was managing it by isolating myself, playing games, and just kind of like being a kid. But when you get into teenage years, you start being a bit more serious with your
Hmm.
thinking, especially if I had this motivation inside me that I couldn't explain. It was just part of me, right? And I started having migraines, like really bad migraines. I had to go to the doctor, get tested because my mother had no idea what was going on with me. And I didn't either. I had like terrible headaches, and they were anxiety headaches, basically migraines caused by anxiety. So I started taking medications for a while to kind of calm myself down. I remember having that for a short while. Not on meds now, but that was like back then. I was still trying to figure it out, and through discussions with my family and things like we kind of like, well, yeah, let's put you on the path where you get to where you need to be to change things, right? So I had started to putting into my head the idea that I would go and get a great education in a profession that would put me in position of change. So I considered medicine, I considered science. I ended up becoming a scientist, a biochemist, and a chemical engineer. And I thought at the time, it's like that was it. Like that's how I'm going to cure diseases. I'm going to figure out systems as an engineer. I'm going to do all that stuff, and it was really interesting. But it turned out not to be my cup of tea, like on a task level. I ended up disliking academic research at the time. I actually like it now, but anyway, back then I really hated that in the lab.
Yeah.
So I like the theory, but not the practice of the work, right? Um, but I did an interesting thesis and all that stuff. So I no longer had a migraine because I was able to put down activities leading me towards change, and that kept me busy and happy and moving forward. I met along the way a bunch of other people. That's how I got connected also with the Iranian movement itself, which gave me a lot of a broader vision of that included ETs. Remember, the internet didn't exist back then, guys.
Yeah.
The people
Yeah.
who are listening, like some people are young, they don't figure it's like, how come you didn't know about these? Well, if you don't find a book
Yeah.
somewhere in the library back then, you don't know anything. Or
Yeah.
if somebody tells you about it, that was then. Now it's like everything everywhere. So that filled it like a bunch of blanks about like the size of the universe and what was within it. It kind of explained a bunch of other things and some mysteries on Earth. So it gave me a bigger picture of what was at stake. It became more than just humanity and planet Earth. My mission became broader than that. After that, it became more about the broader communities, not just us. We're part of something bigger, and that's part of something bigger, and so
Yeah.
on, ad infinitum. So really, like I came to the realization, which I express sometimes, where I believe we're all extremely important to the grand scheme
Yeah.
as unique individuals, and simultaneously we're infinitely insignificant at the same
Yes.
time.
Very well said.
And that's a really interesting paradox saying that.
Yeah.
But it's like because it's like like saying like an ant colony. Each individual ant.
Yeah.
I mean, you crush an ant, the colony survives. Like it's not a problem, right? But crush enough ants, and the colony becomes dysfunctional.
Yeah.
And each ant has a little behavior, like a little something special. Like if it survives, it finds something else. It's a little drop, a little something special that contributes to the whole by the
Yeah.
individual that wouldn't be there if it gets crushed, and yet the colony survives. So there's this dynamic inside the universe, I believe, with everything that's living, including things that are non-conscious, that
Yeah.
have an impact over everything else in its own way. So this vision, I think, is important, which extends also to intelligence and consciousness, where again humanity tends throughout our history to classify things that are superior or inferior to other things. Right?
Hmm.
So our consciousness and our intelligence is superior because we think our version of it is the
Yeah.
best. Everything else we set our yardstick and we design the yardsticks, right? It's like,
Yeah.
well, that's superior because of this is the reason. And and we tend to classify things, and I think that's just the wrong way to think about it, because everything is contributing with different levels of awareness, intelligence, impact, and we're just symbiotic with everything.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, the learning point that we have to understand. And if we get to that point, then we are contributors to everybody else's happiness and well-being,
Yeah.
and they are contributors to our own. Nothing is disconnected. Everything's connected and participatory.
Yeah.
Well
You make
said.
some really good points there. There's a few things that resonate so much. Like when you said earlier about, our systems are now causing stress, and the sort of it underpins all of our thinking is to sort of say, hey, if you sort of analyze it from afar, there's a reason why we've created systems the way we have, because we came from a different era. And so, for instance, representative democracy made sense when we had no internet and distances were vast, and you had representatives that you could trust that weren't as incentivized to do the wrong thing, I guess, it's fair to say. To move to one place, let's say in the US, they would have to travel on a cart and a horse from Los Angeles to Washington to be part of a bigger thing like a federal government. And so those constraints no longer exist. We've got blazing fast. Like look at us, we're here, the three of us. We're in Southeast Asia, South Africa, and East Coast of Australia, and we're having a conversation with video and everything. And we can do this now on an equal level with anyone on the planet. So, given that, it's time that we start questioning the flaws of our systems and perhaps reinvent new ones. And the beauty is there's a lot of people doing that and have done that for a long time. So we're really seeing this as you were sort of suggesting, as the oneness sort of thing where we're all part of the same experience. And some of the things where we can redesign systems, we really need to sort of do it at a multidimensional level. So our education systems shouldn't just come from other humans, but also from the animal world, and particularly also from indigenous tribes that are still trying their best, even though it's extremely difficult for them, to hold on to their way of life and their way of navigating by the stars or by the soil, because that's a different sort of teacher to us. And I think that's gone lost in recent decades, if not centuries. And we're starting to regain it. And through AI, we have all the technology we need to do that quickly. But yeah, really the multidimensionality. So with tapped intelligence, we started sort of forming a number of pillars. We started
Michael,
talking about.
Michael, I'm sorry, there's quite a bad echo while you're speaking, so it's becoming increasingly difficult to hear what you're saying. I don't know if we should just all mute ourselves and see if so I'll mute myself, so then if you mute yourself, let's just see if that's resolved.
It could be, yeah. Is that better? Yeah. Okay. So some of the pillars that we started thinking of, they're actually sort of, it's like a cube, almost like a multi-dimensional cube. A bit like, I don't want to bring up the Rubik's Cube again. That's sort of my childhood. And also, coincidentally, my nickname at school was E.T. I don't know why, but I was given that nickname. No other thought there. But the multidimensionality is our pillars sort of constitute of energy, education, wellness, and then water, and the soul. Those are the sort of the base ones that we started with. And the soul is sort of a product of, we started doing readings using AI, tapping back into people's history. So based on astrology, numerology, and then actually tapping into the Akashic records in a computer, which sounds odd, and it's not so much about that data being correct, but more about opening people's minds to connect with consciousness and to grow self-awareness. And the analogy with water is actually a beautiful one, because water with its fluidity sort of goes through everything. It's in our DNA, in our body. It's in everybody's body. And we're only, if we sort of think of with the mind, of the egoic mind, and we think about our life, we only think about the time between birth and death. But that water that we're made of is actually a lot older. So at the cell level, at the tiniest sort of information cell, and at the um, we are made of water that's been here for millions of years, and that's a beautiful way to sort of connect with that timelessness of who we are, and also with the custodianship that we have to not toxify that water with chemicals, and that's sort of what's been happening for reasons of commerciality and for control and for all these competitive forces. And we're sort of waking up to that now. Is that, hey, this is part of the reason. Could be root causes of several chronic conditions, of cancers, and of people suffering. And so, if you sort of unscramble that egg, we can go back to purity, particularly with the help of AI and concepts such as free energy, which we're here in Australia, but there's a lot of solar energy now. People are charging their cars with it. But I think the opportunities for free energy out of North America, there have been predictions that we're going to have this access to this 0 point energy, that sort of where you can sort of power a house with the size of a shoebox, and you never have to charge anything again. So yeah, I think that's sort of all those technologies, and I'm not sure if you see that as well. Like what are the key obstacles to achieving that vision that you outlined earlier, where we're not stressed to have to go to work for a living, but that we sort of transition more to a resource-based economy?
Yeah, I mean, I've done a few talks where I describe this, like the way I'm seeing this play out. We are in our current systems, we're moving towards it inexorably. And it's very interesting because, and this is primarily the AI race I'm talking about here. As we evolve AI, and there's a great amount of investment within the capitalistic world, the very competitive world, into making the best AI. And there's talk about, the first AI trillionaires and all this stuff. This is a kind of commercial talk, right? Like competitive, like who's going to be the boss of AI. And it makes me laugh a little bit, and I kind of encourage it right now because while we're building up this, and there's like, and it's moving really fast because they all want to be the winner, and they're
Yeah.
investing hundreds of billions of dollars per year, each big tech company, right?
Mm.
And there's China also. There's not only in the U.S. but other parts of the world, but mostly China and the U.S. But that, granted, but still, they're all trying to compete, and they're creating this intelligence that is already like this was Anthropic. I read this about Anthropic like a week ago. 70 to 90% of the code that they write at Anthropic, which is an AI company, is written by their AI. And they're encouraging it because they understand their own AI because they're making it. So they're giving it more work to do more than other companies would. That makes sense, right?
Yeah.
But if they can do it that way and still they're competing with everybody else with the AI, because that's partly how they're trying to compete with Meta and ChatGPT, OpenAI and Google, and as a smaller company. That's like programmers that can do a lot more because
Yeah.
the code is written by AI, and they're building robots that are more and more sophisticated and agile. These are embodiments for AI. They're doing all this stuff really quickly and rolling things out and causing disturbance in the workplace. In that sense, where it's going to come to very quickly to a point where especially knowledge-based work or white-collar work is going to be excessively disrupted. Education, governance, all that
Yeah.
stuff, where if you want to compete, you need AI and the
Mm.
more sophisticated version. And people in there, more and more will be an impediment to the competition between the companies. And that's already started. You're starting seeing statistics since last year where new employees, like I think this was in the States, the percentage of new employees being hired was dropped by like 13% in 1 year. That's because they, instead of hiring new people and training them, it's more effective for their the more experienced employees to be trained in using AI, and the AI does the work of 4 or 5 people.
Yeah.
So they do that because that's more efficient. Competition is that, right? Now
Yeah.
the young people are not getting hired out of university, or at least less, and there's anticipation is going to get worse because they need experience to do better. So now they're teaching, like I'm in the space where we're teaching universities how to integrate AI into education, so prepare the new people to be able to be very effective with AI to be hired because they need that now, right? And now you're doing that. Now AI is needs to be in there. It needs to be everywhere because everybody wants to compete with the technology that's moving forward at a breakneck speed. And now you end up with a like very very quickly. Like if you fast forward just a few years, what happens within that environment of competition and training and using AI is that you kind of notice that the only real um, positions that you'd want people to fill and pay salaries for are positions where the buyer, or the client, wants to have a person there for some reason. It needs to be a person, not an AI. For example, I want to go to the doctor. I don't want to be treated by a screen and a robot. I want a doctor. So the hospital has to hire a certain number of doctors because the client wants that.
Yeah.
Same with entertainment, and there's a bunch of industries. But there's so many industries where you don't care if it's a
Yeah.
person.
Yeah. We're starting to
If
get
it's
used
all
to it.
automated, you're happier because it's cheaper. It becomes a commodity,
Yeah.
and they're trying to make it cheaper and more and better because they
Yeah.
want. And at some point, it's like, okay, it's become very cheap. It's all automated. The client is happy because it's really cheap and hyper high quality. And so I'm not spending a lot, but then I'm also like, where am I making my money now?
Yeah.
Because I'm expensive, and there's only a small percentage of the jobs, maybe 10, 20, 30%, let's be generous, of the positions that require a person because the buyer wants one. You can't run an economy on 30% employees and the rest doing what? You have to reorganize the economy
Exactly.
for that reality. And then all of a sudden, you reinvent that economy. You're removing the competition because now the competition is detrimental to the new economy. Now
Yeah.
you have to
Yeah.
switch to something different, which I'm hoping is going to be more collaborative and so on. Because now, like we're at a state where competition makes is meaningless. Really. So this is all happening naturally
Yeah.
because of competition. Competition will eliminate itself.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had a little chuckle when you said that, that I'm almost encouraging the competition. And the reason why is that our discussion is we're going to get rid of this hierarchical fear-based systems and move to flat organizations. But I sort of agree with everything you've said in the sense that this is exactly what's happening. So that if you sort of think of it as there's only two ways, either the fear-based or the love-centered way, where we have to get along at
Mhm.
an individual level, at a family level, at an organizational level, but even at a geopolitical level, um, then every sort of competitive um, system and every person that plays that for the wrong reasons will eventually expose themselves. And already you see that in the there's so many stories about the people that run the AI companies. There's as many haters as there's lovers of Elon Musk. Peter Thiel, who's at the top of Palantir, working
Mhm.
so closely with the U.S. government, even the president himself. Like there's as many people that can't stand him for, and there's now
Mhm.
it's totally confusing with all the stuff that's in the news. But I think by its own emergence, people start to work it out, and it's sort of what the point is about. We're all achieving singularity. It's just a matter of time. It's that transition that organically happens from a caterpillar to a butterfly, there is a cocoon phase in the middle, and it feels like our society is in that. There's a lot of things that are confusing. We have this incredible technology, and yet a lot of people are on Prozac and on ADHD medication. That's not necessary, and we can sort of unscramble that piece. And we're getting better at that. So I think the healthcare industry particularly has a lot to answer for its past. But now with AI, I remember in the 90s, the company I was with, we had diagnostic systems then, but they were constrained by computing power. And that's no longer a constraint, like the amount of information that we can harness in one place and then leverage for better diagnostic outcomes is incredible. So, and at a cell level, at the microbiome level, we're starting to understand all these things a lot better. So we're being able to build much better integrative systems for health. It's all happening fast.
Um, if I may, I want to say I much more prefer my burger being handled by a robot that has a piece of code that says, if the tomato falls on the floor, do not put it on the burger. Whereas a human would be like, oh, was that 5 seconds or was it 2 seconds? Can I put it on the burger still? So I think it has its benefits in that, rules might be followed stricter in a more strict manner, which would be beneficial. But at the same time, I think we've all had that experience with when you're trying to achieve something and you're speaking to an AI and you're like basically going in a loop because you still need to improve on that process. Um, but my question that I actually want to hear from you, Sylvain, is so there's a lot of talk about us integrating with the machine, and I heard what you said earlier about Elon Musk. In particular, from my point of view, you are like a pro technology person. Like there are many people that are like, no, technology is bad for us, but you're like pro technology in my mind. So from that mindset, what is your opinion on nanobots being inside of the human body, taking care of stuff, taking care of processes? So in my opinion, a lot of those processes that the nanobots are supposed to be taken care of can be taken care of by the human body if it's left to function optimally, but it's not left to function optimally. That's why it has issues. So, do you think we should get the human body to function optimally, or should we introduce nanobots? And why would you say
Well,
yes?
I don't know. I think it's a and or kind of situation. The human body, if you just fixate on your question with the human body and nanobots, the human body is filled with nanobots already, biological ones. They're part of us, right? Created by our own DNA. It's encoded, like you said, and sometimes systems don't function optimally for a variety of reasons. It could be because of your epigenetic, it could be inherited genetics that kind of like cause dysfunction at a fundamental level. Could be environmental while you live. You drank too much during your life, or took drugs, or don't sleep enough, whatever, right? So those are things you can fix, and your body is going to fix itself. But I don't think we should also. So the point is, like, I think the primary thing we should be doing is taking care of our existing body as best we can, right? And get the body to organize itself without external help as much as possible. But in cases where the body needs extra help, I don't see a problem using technology for that, right? And I think you have to weigh, just like we're already doing in a reasonably good way, like you weigh the pros and cons of using certain medicines or certain processes or surgeries on the body or not. And I think you need to be, the research has to be validated by institutions, which we typically do already, albeit some would argue sometimes it's not enough or too much. Okay. And you need to be, as the recipient of a procedure or medicine, you have to be very well informed and make your own decision about it. So I think the whole mix has to be available as options, but ultimately it comes into the hands of the subject. Like, what do you want to do with your body? Because that's your body, right? You want to use more tech. uh, or do you want to, just try to do your best and be healthy on your own? In time, we'll get good enough at understanding the human body and how it functions at its smallest level that we're able to more and more coax the existing body to do well. So instead of inserting a medicine, for example, and we're doing this right now already with certain techniques because we're getting there, where what you're doing is that you're inserting basically a molecule that messages the body into doing certain things and letting the body do the work. The earliest example that was very obvious was the concept of the COVID-19 vaccines, the mRNA vaccines. Um, the the technique that was used, the mRNA vehicle within the vesicle, all that stuff, was fascinating, and it's an example of that, where you're inserting an RNA and you're making the cell produce the viral part that will react with your own body. So that's us attempting to use your own body's mechanisms to do something. It's one of the earliest. And it was, I mean, people would argue whether it was too experimental, it wasn't mature enough, but it's one of the uh, earlier cases of this. Since then, and after that, we've had a bunch of other similar type of techniques. It's not all mRNA, but other techniques similar to that, and we're doing a lot of research about that, where we're trying to coax the cell to do certain things, but without having a harsh chemical into it. So you're kind of messaging the cell like, you should be doing that like on your own, but you're not. So tickle, tickle, nudge, nudge, and the cell does it, and it's seen as a much less perturbing process. We're figuring stuff out, and
Yeah.
at one point, you don't need mechanical sci-fi nanobots in the body. We can just like the body already has the nanobots. That's what the body is. The cell is full of them. It's like just talk to the nanobots. That's already there. And that's probably more where we're going to end up pretty quick, not in the far
Yeah.
future. That's how I'm seeing it. But before then, yeah, we may have mechanical bots, and we're going to experiment with a bunch of different techniques that kind of do different outcomes.
I'm interested with your specific background, and we spoke about this earlier about the quantification. We've all, if you got these sort of devices that we wear, we're collecting so much data now with the advancements of AI. There's more and more people that are speculating where this could go, and so on the bandwidth of, we can prevent certain illnesses, all the way to can we potentially become like immortal in this body? Where do you sit in that spectrum? Do you see that as a possibility? It's a big question, I guess. But do you see that from your perspective as a possibility? And are there any impediments to us achieving it that you can see? And is there a way we can speed up so that people don't have to suffer the way they do now? Three
Well, let me
questions.
answer the question broadly. It's like right now, everything is possible. And what I mean by that, like if you point to a sci-fi movie, right, and say, well, is that possible? I would say yes. Uh, there's some nuances, some things that we know is impossible now, and things like that. But let's say generally, like people ask about the Terminator movie, right, with AI, and it's like, well, it's Skynet and that's possible. Say yes, but extremely low probability because of how we function, how the military functions, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's very low, but it's still not impossible to
Yeah.
have that kind of situation because a lot of things is possible, just highly unlikely. Um, so the point is, like, we can have in our path something that leads to a very dystopian world, and we can have something that leads to a very utopian or quasi utopian world too. It all depends on the decisions we make together that'll lead
Mm.
where. One of the probably most likely dystopian futures is one where there's not enough regulation or thought about how we release artificial intelligence in the world, and we give it too much
Yeah.
control, and it kind of like decides on its own how it evolves, and we can't mitigate it, and there's no measure of it to kind of like cycle back to being with us in symbiosis. It's kind of like
Run
uh,
away.
diverges in purpose and functionality away from our purpose. That's very dangerous, and we don't know what that could look like. It could completely this like like many sci-fi movies, like in many ways, humanity becomes kind of a parasite, and they say, well, yeah, they're kind of pointless. They're destroying the environment. That
Yeah.
is definitely like something that is in the radar, and it should be.
Yeah.
And so a lot of scientists and myself, we were talking about. I don't agree with the slowdown necessarily. I know a lot of people are saying, well, let's slow down. I think that's just unrealistic because that won't happen. You can't
Yeah.
tell all this competitive sphere with all the investors and pressures to, hey, like wait 6 months. Like if one of them decides not to wait, everybody not doesn't wait. And so the Chinese and it, like it's not realistic to have a pause, even though it intellectually would be nice. Let's pause a bit, but that just won't happen. What we can do that while we're rushing forward, we can think and implement rules, regulations, controls in so that the AI that is being deployed as it sophisticates maintains and converges with human purpose. The other way, the symbiosis end of some way. And if we can direct it in that way and consistently, uh, then we'll be okay, and then we'll be living harmoniously with these AI that may have a different purpose and kind of like move independently and just like I described, but it'll, in convergence with us and in
Yeah.
dialogue, in an agreement with us. I many other of my colleagues have started talking about how we shouldn't be discussing trying to control AI, at least the advanced AGI type
Yeah.
AI,
Yeah.
because even though there's a lot of thought and ideas around how do we like have a kill switch, control on off, and all that stuff, most of us now agree that that's just not realistic either. If you
Yeah.
want the benefit of AI, you have it, you need it to be free, and if it's
Yeah.
free, it can figure out a way to bypass the control.
Yeah.
So the only way to control AI in a realistic way, the advanced AI as we move forward, is to put it in a state where there's balance, and you can have AI that is part of that, like kind of a symbiosis within the AI world, or the AI civilization, if you would. You can have police AI that are narrow AI that are just kind of like always nudging towards a convergence, right? They're kind of helping the AI society to just be, and this by design. We designed this ecology of AI. You have these free-willed AI, but they're guided by other narrow AI that have strict programming that keeps the convergence, right? So that the AI is free to do all sorts of stuff that's really important to us, but it's always like nudged back into the middle. You see what I mean? It's like, oh,
Yeah.
nope, nope, this way. And then with our interaction and our wisdom, hopefully, with less anxiety, we'll be able to have a symbiosis with our AI friends, and that leads to a almost all the positive quasi
Yeah.
utopian scenarios you can think about.
Yeah. Beautiful. I think that's aligns very much with the thoughts we can sort of see in terms of, if you really sort of think through where we came from and wanting to move away from, hierarchical structures, which are purely sort of on the masculine dominant sort of side of things, but look at the more, um, you know, caring, nurturing, and sharing aspects of society, we can sort of see that systems are already shifting that way. So there's a lot of sharing economy apps that people are completely okay with using, like whether it's Uber or Airbnb, where the price is sort of dictated by the algorithm. There's not a lot of animosity between drivers and riders. you know, uh, we're taking away the payment experience for that service, and we can start seeing those kind of solutions being able to be brought to decentralized technology with blockchain, which is all secure and out in the open, and then transforming all these things to a more of a meritocracy where we are able to contract with anyone. It could be local, but it could be worldwide as well. Um, and the value gets determined by the parties. So it's sort of a self-regulating idea of starting to organize um, preventative healthcare, individuated education, which sort of with all these systems that are overdue for disruption and that now need to be quickly upgraded for the speed at which AI is is developing. But we see that as a beautiful opportunity. So we're already sort of talking about, if you think of management consulting from the past, it was all centralized, it was all geared towards maximizing profits for shareholders. And we're now at a point where Nvidia, I just checked this morning, is worth $4 trillion, and most people don't even know Nvidia. But it took Apple Computer 20 to 30 years to get to 1 trillion. So the speed at which this monetary system is producing billionaires, sure, there's merit, but it's not. It's out of whack in a way. So we're in Australia here. It should be the richest country on earth if you just looked at the minerals. And there's more and more families living in tents on the bridges. There's clearly something amiss. That's not getting better; it's getting worse. So we see the emergence of even government systems that could be completely decentralized, starting in local communities, and then effectively connecting globally, as if borders are sort of starting to lose their value once we start sort of agreeing on certain things that we should organize around. So we see a really, and then the balance, indeed, like you suggested with AI, to find out, how can we all together keep this on the rails so that it doesn't run away from us.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, oh, go ahead, Angelique, with your question
Sorry,
or comment.
Sylvain, I just want to say that we have been speaking for an hour, so unless anybody has anything urgent that they need to do, if it's okay if we continue. All right.
I'm
Okay.
good.
All right. Please go ahead, Sylvain.
Yeah, there was a. I mean, there's a bunch to unpack that we can keep talking about. So I think we should continue. There was some kind of idea, and I would have to rejuvenate the files, but I was created a website and some guiding documents around new systems. And the main system that we were working on was the governance system. We were talking about participatory representative governments and things like that, which was born out of like a few hundred years ago, right? When
Yeah.
people didn't have communication means, and to make that was the only way for individuals to really relay their needs in a governance sense at the time. Now things are different. Um, so that's really important to really just you don't need to look into the detail, but just feel it. Like how come we're still thinking this system is okay? Um, if you just ask just about anyone in any country where there's voting, like so mostly democracies, I would guess, and ask them if the government functions well, if they represent their needs. Like I would suspect like the percentage would be like 80% of people say it's it's not good. Like there's something wrong with it. But what are you gonna do? Kind of like like there's nothing to be done about it. It's like it's always
Yeah.
been this way. Well, my point is like it doesn't just because it's been there your whole life doesn't mean it has to stay. So the concept paper was surrounding a couple of concepts where like we don't need representation.
Yeah.
Like I don't need, like I'm on the internet all the time. Like I'm kind of representing myself to the public all the time. And
Yeah.
most people are doing the same. So why do I need a person to speak for me? My
Yeah.
voice is heard, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of figured out like, well, based on that foundation, you can have because there's a lot of data that's unfiltered from different people, and you need to voice it to a centralized organizing location where they have resources like your inside your municipality, your province, your
Mhm.
federal level. Like that's where you have these funds that are organized that have equipment and researchers there, to serve. Those are already there. So well, you need a way to filter that, and so AI is great for that. So
Yeah.
you could use that. So people could communicate with their local, regional, federal governments like they do in social media,
Yeah.
pictures, videos, text, whatever. It's like this is what that's happening here. This is what I want. All this messy data in
Yeah.
whatever language, right? It goes into the cloud, into the, let's call it the system, the government communication system. Let's call it, right? I forget the term I coined it, but it was something similar to that. AI can filter these things, this
Yeah.
massive amount of information, provide that not to a representative, like we don't need it. It's like to the executive, like directly. And AI can kind of sort that. It's like, okay, this neighborhood, it seems like in this span of time, they're complaining about that in that neighborhood. Okay. We have, these are the resources that we have from taxes and whatever, right? So, well, that seems to be a big problem. Let's boil that up as a priority for the human beings that take decisions on the executive and suggest a budget that makes sense regarding the priorities based on the voices of the community. That is a cool idea. And then they respond. It's like, okay, like this seems to be hot. Let's do that. There's no direct communication between the two individuals. Between it just
Yeah.
AI kind of filters it, right? It's like, okay, let's do that. Here's the budget. We have workers and robots and people to
Yeah.
execute and do the job. And the people in that community see things happening. Oh, what we were worried about is fixed in a smart way according to what we said was wrong because we're there looking, seeing, we sent the videos and the pictures. It's been done. Guess what? I'm going to continue feeding into the system because it works,
Yeah.
right? So
Absolutely. Yeah.
participation goes up
Yeah.
because there's a
Yeah.
reaction. And then people can go up like, how come my request hasn't been, you can go into the system and you can see how the AI and why the AI is
Yeah.
prioritizing yourself. It's not in a black box and say, oh yeah, my small concern is much smaller than that one in that community. I understand why that's a priority. I'm going to shut my trap and not complain too much, right? Because
Yeah.
that makes sense. And then you have a whole community that communicates. And the executive that handles the budgets is doing the suggestions. You don't need to vote for these people. These are just like right
Absolutely.
now, we have ministries, their job is to execute. They're
Yeah.
not elected officials.
You're totally speaking my language here. I've come up with that same thing and documented it in 2012, where I first said, "Hey, the system is broken. We can run government as if it's Airbnb, where we prioritize the challenges that we have locally, regionally, federally, but also universally, and then have a contest of ideas where people essentially collaborate on solutions that also get, there's guardrails. There's going to be things that we're always going to look out for people that are underserviced or disadvantaged in some ways, but that can be built pretty much like Bitcoin on secure technology, where there is a convergence of these ideas and solutions, and then they can sort of move into this idea that we're starting to organize of a meritocracy, where we're starting to look at, okay, well, this benefits everyone. Now let's look at finding people that can work on those solutions, and those can be private enterprises, all completely transparent, so no shenanigans of corruption and the like. And there's a really good example. So one of our streams is water. just because it is so important to human life, great proxy for consciousness, but also because of challenges. So the world is now emerging, well, it's waking up to the idea that uh, our water systems have been inundated with chemicals, and particularly of late, PFAS chemicals. They're affectionately termed forever chemicals. They've been making it into our sewer infrastructure, our water infrastructure, and in our fire retardant fire foams. And these are already having an effect on health within firefighters because they work with it a lot. But we're starting to see that they also have an effect into the waterways and therefore in the human body, contributing to an environmental, crisis that we really can't sort of scope yet of how bad it's going to be, because it's not so much like an explosion or something. It's something that happens over 3, 4, 5 decades, but it's getting worse, and we're seeing that. And what we're also seeing is that the governments who are essentially who have built that infrastructure based on old processes and tenders where they're looking for low price operators, the whole system is sort of driven down quality and checks and balances, and also awareness, because people are just so under pressure to just get a job, get some money so they can pay their mortgages, that they're looking the other way. It just has to be done. And so now we're seeing assets that are being commissioned to be designed with a 50-year lifespan, but they break down after 2 years because a low end contractor was used and they used a chemical that didn't apply properly. And now this is a forever chemical that's in the water supply systems. Now that we know this, and the vast public isn't really aware yet, but people in the industry are starting to become aware. It's interesting to see how slow the response is and how existing governments just don't want to discuss it. They want to find ways to quickly shove it under the rug. And then there's corporations who've been involved in creating this mess who are now putting their hand up. Yeah, we're very concerned, and you can pay us again because we have ways to clean it all out. The problems that they were of their own. So I'm sort of saying that people are becoming more aware, and particularly locally in local municipalities, you'll see people are here in Australia organizing in groups where they tackle issues. So the idea of blockchain democracy, it's too hard to do that in one chunk, but we can do it locally. And so we're in my sort of local town, Noosa, where I spent half my time. I've started working with the councillors, and I'm hoping soon to be able to launch a project. And we can use existing software for this. With Twitter or Facebook, you can already sort of launch polls. So you can sort of start mimicking an idea of getting the local public engaged in solutions that actually matter to them. And I think that's sort of what we're trying to do with tapped in talent as well, to start, getting people used to the idea that, hey, we're not powerless. Because it's very easy to say, I can't change the government on my own. But it's also, that's sort of, we shouldn't play small in these things because the technological solutions are clearly there. Like if Facebook can have, or even the software that we're using, we can connect internationally with video and data, and it can be quick. Like you can send a tweet, and the whole world can read it like seconds later. So we don't need physical connections. We can work on frequencies, and we can design all of our systems with that new technology in mind, and then engage the people and sort of say, hey, if we need a quick vote on a quick issue, these are the guardrails within which this operates. And I've been testing this recently with Twitter Spaces, only small groups, but it's interesting how quickly you can engage people from all over the world around certain topics. So there's a whole lot of opportunities that arise there, and how we sort of organize for that future is going to be very exciting.
Yeah, I think I'm going to say something that will please Angelique. It pleases me. Um, when we talk about technology like this, right, about more and more technology, more advanced technology, the a lot of people are thinking about, well, that means there's going to be more stuff around me, right? That kind of busyness that is like mechanical, like kind of like robots flying around, like all that stuff. I don't think that's even where we're headed, even though that's kind of the image that's evocative. Um, what's really going on, what's going to happen is that there's actually going to be less stuff, mechanical and technological around us, at least not visibly, and a lot more stuff happening in the background, in
Yeah.
the web, in the cloud, in the walls, embedded. So I think our future with tech is in fact going to be fewer things around us. So it'll feel like a more natural world, which is a weird thing to think about. It feel more natural, and this is represented just by. I wrote an article a few years ago, and I was writing about self-driving cars,
Yeah.
and there was a in 2019, so that was a kind of I think it was a while ago, and I did some kind of calculations like what would happen if all of our vehicles would be replaced by self-driving vehicles. And the economy of that is actually pretty interesting because if you have a self-driving vehicle, um, that's fine if you own the vehicle, but cars are typically parked only like 23 hours out of 24 on average. They're just parked somewhere. But if
Yeah.
you have a self-driving car, yeah, you could just exclusively have it doing your thing 1 hour a day on average. But
Yeah.
you can also just rent it out for others like a taxi, like an Uber, right? And that's what Uber and a bunch of companies back then and still now they're talking about. Like now,
Yeah.
self-driving cars are not out in the public like the level fives and all that stuff, but it will get there. So you actually end up with number one, if most are this way, like they're just rent, like you use it and then you renting the rest out. There's way fewer car owners and a lot more
Hmm.
car, but everybody's using a car. It's just sometimes it's renting somebody else's. So
Yeah.
you have imagine in a city where in some cities you have up to 20% of the land area is parking space. In some all that parking space because the car is moving. It's not staying somewhere.
Yeah.
It's not parked there. It just like picks up somebody else that needs to go somewhere. It becomes cars still moving. So I have way fewer cars running around, and they all become part of the mass transit system. You don't need all the parking spaces. So even though the population has grown, you have fewer cars running around and no parking space. Well, all that parking spaces can be green, gardens, residential, whatever else. Have fewer, like all those cars you see in the city, wherever you are, like cut that in half, even with a
Yeah.
bigger population. And that's your rush hour. Okay. And it's just,
Yeah.
uh, so that's what I mean by we're moving where there's going to be less because now people don't need to own everything and you can integrate
Yeah.
things in natural way. People don't want to have streets filled with cars. That's not a goal.
Yeah.
People don't
Absolutely.
like that. Fewer cars, more green. They want to have that. So technology allows us to still have what we want and eliminate the visible elements that perturb us, our peace, and our increase our
Yeah.
anxiety. So you can imagine robots in a house won't necessarily be like iRobot or the existing human form robot where you have a robot walking around the house. You can have that. Like that. I don't mind that. There's one that can do a lot of things. But possibly you have your kitchen and it has robot arms that come out when you to do some cooking for you, and then they retract back, right? And you have during the night you have like a little things kind of running around doing things, picking stuff up while you sleep. And during the day, like everything is clean and working well, and you're talking to AI and it does stuff in the cloud and provides information here and here in different services. It feels more natural, less obtrusive, less busy, less noisy, less polluting, and so on. As long as we figure out, with all this activity and this computing, how we're going to power all these systems, because that's more power than we're using now, and we're well on the road to do that.
Yeah.
And how the society is going to be reorganized, but I think that's going to come. Much of it's going to come naturally. So I'm dreaming of a, and we're talking about cultured meats also, and vertical farming, and where you can
Yeah.
repatriate huge tracts of wildland back into natural spaces because you're growing all that stuff inside buildings in the where you're not harming animals and doing all that stuff. So there's all sorts of technological advances that can allow us to have more wild, more nature in healthier
Yeah.
environments altogether.
It's a
All parts
beau-
of choice to make.
it's a beautiful segue to where we first started with your vision 20 years from now. Maybe that's sort of, we can talk about that in towards wrapping up. It's been what is it, an hour 15, but um, yeah, I sort of, it's interesting because we can see all these things moving in that direction. So we have AI. So a lot of people are sort of still on the fear-based programming, and that's that shift that we'd love to see happen faster. Um, but so if you sort of think of China, where they have, we've seen that they have a social credit score system, right, which is being used. It could be seen as to police people, where they have facial recognition and they can follow everyone around. I think those systems have already been prepared and have been in place for a while. We might not know exactly to which extent that's being used. But if you think of it in a benevolent sense, so if we can finally start getting along beyond division, and we can start, um, getting not kill each other for religious beliefs, for instance, or for a skin color. So if we, as humans, if we learn to get along with each other in harmony, you can imagine how beautiful those systems can actually help us. And then, with the robots that are being developed, if we can take to your vision that we started with, the stress out of people's lives, and start them to grow hope and in the belief that we're actually on that journey, and they can start seeing it as well. Because I think that's sort of mainly lacking. So we're seeing a lot of the news, and it's all still very fear-based and negative. And yet there's billions of dollars being spent on AI. And to that same point of, billionaires all want to go to Mars, but they don't seem to be interested in leveling the playing field here on Earth, so that, you know, Africa is getting to a better level of nutrition and roads and healthcare systems, because they're still very much behind. And maybe not South Africa, Angelique, but large parts of Africa, parts of Asia as well. And really sort of, we have operating systems that are completely scalable. So, cities around the world with 20, 30 million people, it all works. It works now, but it's still based on that old hierarchical money-based, fear-based system. So the more we can sort of transition that over to a more uh, equal, equal-footed system, we can start to harmonize all those things. And I agree with you that I don't think it has to take 20 years. I think if the consciousness shift can be accelerated, so people, and hence our name, tapped in. If we can tap in more people into this beautiful vision, we can start reverse engineering it, and we can start making changes towards it tomorrow at an individual level, at a group level within our families or in our small businesses, and then ultimately in our corporations. And I think that's what's now happening with the way that we consume media along, alternative networks. We eventually all are exposing our own humanity and the choices we make. And so we don't need all need a Rolls Royce or a Ferrari. That vehicle you mentioned, there was a project called Ollie, which was a 3D printed self-driving solar-powered car. So a very low footprint uh, on the environment, essentially. And it would drive around people in cities. So they didn't have to call a taxi. They can just jump on an Ollie, and it was all smartphone controlled. So, and that's 10 years ago that we had that. So the technology is advanced. These things are all in our near future. So it's been very exciting to share those ideas with you and to hear from your insights. Angelique, are there any things you wanted to close with, or final thoughts?
Yes, I do have a final thought. I think we need to have a round two of this because it's been really interesting, and I feel like there's more to unpack. So I do think we have to have a round two. That's my final thought.
Yeah,
Uh,
round two would
yeah,
be lovely. There's so much stuff here. I think maybe the takeaway, at least for this segment, is that I'm calling on people uh, to look around, and instead of around this, all the systems and what you where you're living and whatever you're doing, and every time you think, well, this is how has always been this way, and thus maybe I
Mm.
can't do anything or I can't change. Think again. Think more about like what could I do to have that change? Because the what we need now is really not necessarily a consensus in a way. I mean that would be useful, but it's hard to get. But we need to people to be open for things that has seemingly always been there that seem to be unchanging. To revert that thought to we can change this, and what could we do? Like what would be the better model? Because the complacency is the enemy here. If people just are quite
Yeah.
content in accepting the way things are, even though they're bad, then it's really hard for anybody to move. So I think we cannot accept things as they are. We must constantly think about how can this be better? How can we improve things? It doesn't need to be a big change necessarily, but sometimes small changes incrementally is the way to go. So I would encourage every listener here to think about like, even the political system, governing systems, economy. Think about the big things, education, that have seemingly been there forever, and think about like, okay, how would I do this? Like, what would be a better way? Don't think it's impossible. Just if you can think about it, it's possible.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. And I think that greases the wheels for bigger organizations or groupings that have more power to move systems to actually take action because there's belief in the population that change can happen.
Very well said.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And all the places where we'll be uploading this video, we'll also share your contact details and your information. So if anybody wants to get a hold of you with their brilliant ideas, they'll know where to find you.
Hmm.
So from my side, that is it for today. I am really grateful that we could spend this time together. Thank you for your presence and your knowledge and all of this information that you shared. And I definitely think that it will help others to open their mind, especially as a big part of the population that's very close-minded towards these things. And I hope these conversations open their minds up to a better way of thinking about these things. Yeah. So from my side, thank you.
Same for me. Thanks for tapping in with us. I think you shared some brilliant insights from your perspective, Sylvain, and totally agree. We're here to discuss hopeful plans for the future. And what we ask our people often is, if you can think without constraints, what would you change tomorrow? And the observation that we have is that it's difficult for people to take away their constraints. It's almost like we sometimes we require a factory reset, like a holiday does, but in a more structural level. But I'm sure if we meet again, we can take this to a whole nother level and start really helping people find hope and also connect with all of our people that we're speaking with, because these systems are all changing and they're changing with from a heart centered perspective. So thanks so much for your contribution and talking with us today. And I look forward to the next time.
Thank you so much for having me.
What a pleasure.